So I'm very pleased to introduce our next guest, Ajay Mohan, who's the youngest executive director of the Democratic Party of Orange County, which is very exciting. And we're so lucky to have him here, who I think that we talk about this a lot, but really to make an impact, we have to have year-round organizing and not just donating right at the last minute before the elections, but making sure we make those investments long-term. And that's exactly what Ajay and the party have been doing. So we're really pleased to have them here. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Gwen. And frankly, I didn't know I was going after Representative Porter. This is completely unfair. I just want to say I'm not going on Lawrence O'Donnell tomorrow night, but I'm still very glad to be here with all of you. If anyone's in charge of permissions for screen sharing, if you wouldn't mind giving me that permission real quick, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm here to talk about a couple things, right? Number one, give you a quick update on what the party's doing, how we're serving you all, and how we're making sure that Orange County is going more blue. Two, making sure that you all know what Laguna Beach has resulted in redistricting, right? What's happened at the federal level? Obviously, you know, Congresswoman Porter is going to be running for your congressional district, but also at the state level. I'm so glad to see Judy here. And very importantly for us is all those local races, right? We know that these local races, especially school board, city council, district attorney, are going to be so impactful for Orange County residents going forward. So very glad to be here and so glad to talk to you all. One thing on the party front. So obviously, you know, our teams are working very hard to make sure that we're training candidates, that we're supporting candidates, that we're connecting them to the right resources at every level of office. So that means, you know, I was just talking actually to Judy today, making sure that we're getting the right people who are helping her campaign, making sure that we're getting candidates in over 285 local or 285 offices across Orange County. You can imagine that's a huge lift. And frankly, these offices really matter, right? Just an hour ago in Yorba Linda, we have a Democratic school board member who shut down a meeting because no one was complying with the mask mandates or orders. So that's what Democrats can do. Last cycle, we took a plurality of Orange County school boards. So we're very excited to keep the work going and make sure that we're all represented by good Democrats. Okay, let's dive into data. So Laguna Beach is interesting. So I'll start with this, right? When we look at congressional races, we have to look at a whole bunch of data from the previous cycles. And frankly, when we have new districts, that data equation kind of changes up, kind of takes on new life. So what we're looking at is obviously presidentials, right? Where are the presidential scores in 2016 and 2020? But also very importantly is the gubernatorial races. So we're looking at the 2018 gubernatorial race versus, let's say, a post-Trump election in the 2021 recall of the gubernatorial race, which is the first post-Trump all vote by mail election. So when we're thinking about, you know, scoring and making sure we're investing in the right resources in the right places, these are the kinds of elections and data that we're looking at. So for Laguna Beach, it gets pretty interesting. And here's two things I want us all to think about, right? Is the results and voter registration. Those are two different things. So on the results side, Laguna Beach stayed about the same between the 2018 gubernatorial race and the 2021 recall race. It had about the same vote percentage to go to the Democrat. But in terms of voter registration, Laguna Beach outperformed the county by almost 2 times because you all in the last 3 years have gone almost 7 points to the left over Republicans, which is incredible. Here's what that tells us, is that tells us that even though people's minds aren't changing as much in terms of who to vote for, that means at least there's a realignment in terms of what party they identify with. And that means parties like ours can directly communicate with them with larger sums of money, which is very important. But what that also tells us is that we have a lot of work to do in talking to voters and actually persuading them on the issues. Representative Porter was just talking about the child tax credit, right? Obviously, if that issue is not popular, we're not going to talk about that with voters, but persuading voters, especially in Laguna Beach, is going to be super important because Laguna Beach is actually in the epicenter of a lot of really tough races. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's look at those tough races. Okay, there we go. Cool. So this is a map of Orange County, and it's new congressional districts. The shades are the 2018 gubernatorial race results. So we think that's a really good benchmark because as you know, in Orange County specifically, there's a huge difference between presidential races and down ballot congressional or lower races, right? In fact, in Gil Cisneros' old district, Congressional District 39 in Orange County, in the Orange County portion, there's an 11-point difference between how Biden did and then how the congressional candidate did. So we're really cognizant of that, and that's why we're using gubernatorial scores to score this. We also know that Orange County has moved about 3 points to the left since 2018. So, and that kind of balances out with the midterm effect where Biden's president, and that means, unfortunately, a lot of our down ballot candidates will suffer. So obviously, Laguna Beach is smack in the middle of CD 47. Or maybe not in the middle, but right on the edge of CD 47, which is where Katie's running against some very strong potential Republican opponents. So the strongest opponent that we see is former Republican Assembly member Scott Bogg. He's also the former OCGOP chair, and he's released some pretty impressive fundraising numbers in the last several months. So please keep an eye out for him. There's two other technical Republican candidates in CD 47. That's Brian Burley, who ran for office in Huntington Beach last cycle, didn't do so well, and Amy Fan West, who's a little bit new, but she has a national profile through Twitter, actually. So that's a pretty interesting one. So Katie has some strong Republican opponents, and we're keeping an eye on that. But we also know, Representative Porter has over $15 million cash in hand. She's one of the most prolific fundraisers in the House, and we're so grateful to have her here in Orange County. So that's the 47th. I'll briefly touch on the other congressional districts. CD 45, which is this backwards C-looking district here, is going to be the most competitive assembly district in Orange County this cycle. The reason why, it's because it's a little over 4 points Democratic in voter registration. It's also it also has a Republican incumbent running in it, right? Michelle Steele, and obviously I think we're all very well acquainted with her. She's going to be running in this particular district, and I'll just point this out. This district fully encompasses the area that we call Little Saigon, right? Garden Grove, Westminster, Fountain Valley. That's going to be a theme in terms of competitive races that I'm going to be talking about in just a second. So she's running against two Democrats, Jay Chen and Joseph Cho. Obviously, we're still waiting on the CDP endorsement in March to support someone directly, but just know that one's going to be the most competitive. We have a slightly tough race. In fact, a really tough race, I'll be honest, in CD 40, which is the new Inland Orange County district. That one's going to be, actually, we have an unannounced Democratic candidate who's going to be running for that against incumbent Young Kim. And that one went to Biden by a point, but again, it went to John Cox in 2018 by a massive 14 points. So as you can imagine, that's a huge difference. And we tend to take the 2018 gubernatorial race as a better indicator of what's going to happen. So the CD 40 is a tough one, but we're still going to give it our all. And then, of course, we have Mike, Congressman Levin, running down in South County. Largely the same district. They got a point more Republican, but he's up against some tough opponents as well. You all might know Supervisor Lisa Bartlett, a prolific fundraiser, has the support of Larry Elder. And also the guy who ran last time, Brian Marriott's running again. So he just actually got endorsed by the OCGOP. And then Christopher Rodriguez, who is actually Speaker McCarthy's handpicked successor in this district because he has a Latino surname. And that's something we have to keep in mind. And in fact, I got to give a shout out to Laura Horgan, our South Vice Chair, for starting the Latino community organizing in South County to stop someone like Christopher Rodriguez from taking that district. All right, let's move on. And I hope we'll have time for questions, but I'm going to try to race through this. So on the state Senate side, we are also faced with a slightly tough map, but Orange County is still super competitive. We're going to get a whole lot of investment from the California Senate Dems this cycle. Of course, Dave Min got reconfigured a little bit in CD 30 or in Senate District 37. He's not up until 2024. This cycle, only the even number Senate districts are up. So that means Orange County has 30, 34, 36, and 38. And Laguna Beach is smack in the middle of 36. And you'll notice 36, which covers all of coastal Orange County, it goes inland to, wait for it, Little Saigon. So there's that, and it goes all the way up into this little LA County portion of Cerritos and Artesia. We're very lucky, and I'm sure you all know her pretty well, but we're very lucky to have Councilmember Kim Carr from Huntington Beach, she was just mayor, running on the Democratic side in this district. She's going to give it a hell of a fight. I've already seen those internal fundraising numbers. It's looking great. Against Republican Assembly member Janet Nguyen. Now, Janet Nguyen's tough. I don't know if you remember in 2018, she defeated an incumbent Republican in the primary election in the Little Saigon area. So she has very deep roots in that Little Saigon area, and that just points out to us what deep organizing that we need to do there. And I'm happy to talk about what efforts we've started this past year to do that. Of course, there's another district that doesn't cover Laguna, but we think we can pick it up. Pat Bates's old seat, approximately, right? She's termed out, thank goodness. So in CD 38, we have two Democratic candidates, Catherine Blakespeare and someone who's going to be announcing tomorrow, running against a kind of no-name Republican, frankly, a former car dealership owner. So that one's going to be fun. It's more than 5 points Democratic over Republican voter registration. So we're very much expecting to pick that one up. Moving on to state assembly, and I noticed we have our newly announced candidate Judy Mancuso on the call. Got to give a big shout out to her. Thank you for stepping up. Laguna Beach is right in the corner of 8072. Again, most of coastal Orange County, and goes into Lake Forest. Now, Judy's going to have some tough opponents. She has Diane Dixon, Newport Beach council member, and she has Scott Voice, who's a Lake Forest council member who's very popular in Lake Forest, very conservative. And frankly, can I be honest? Diane Dixon's colleagues, 4 of her colleagues on the Newport Beach Council, all endorse Scott Voice. So that's a fun little fact for you. Laguna Beach is going to be very important to this area because Laguna Beach is the only Laguna Beach and technically Lake Forest and Annalisa Vieja, that portion, are the only areas with Democratic pluralities in voter registration. That means we need to turn out every Democrat. We need to make sure that people know about the assembly race because 8072 is very, very tough. Let me make sure I pull up the correct statistics here. But even in the presidential race, it only went to Biden by 1.8%. You have to remember, if we're scaling on the gubernatorial race in 2018, it actually went to John Cox by about 7%. So that is a significant jump that we have to address, right? And that's by organizing specifically lower income, more Latino communities in the Huntington Beach area, making sure that we're targeting the new and AAPI communities in Lake Forest, capitalizing on our Democratic majority or plurality in Aliso Viejo. So we're definitely taking a look at that. Another shout out I want to say, obviously, your Assemblymember Claudia Peachy Norris is running now in my area of all of Irvine. So thank you for giving her up to us. And then I do want to mention the most competitive assembly district in Orange County. And guess what? It's centered on Little Saigon again. So we're going to have a candidate, a very strong Democratic candidate, announcing in just a few days here. And she's running against the Westminster Mayor, Tree Ta, and a Fountain Valley Council member, Michael Bowe. Again, super important. And I think you're noticing a trend here. The confluence of tight races in Orange County this cycle all go around Little Saigon. All right, very last map I'm going to show you. This is the one that our party is most concerned with. Obviously, the Democratic Party of Orange County is specifically tasked with electing Democrats to local races, and that's what we've been aiming to do, and that's what we have been doing. But I will say this, is that this is the new supervisor map. We know after this pandemic how powerful the $8 billion budget of the supervisors are. They control Cal Optima, they control access to healthcare, distribution of vaccines and boosters. These offices are incredibly important to our daily lives, right? Districts, we have 3 districts up this cycle. It's districts 2, districts 4, and 5. Now, 2 is a heavily Democratic district, majority Latino VRA district for the first time in this county's history. We have 2 very strong Democrats running for that, so I'm not too worried. District 4, it's a 12-point or almost 13-point Democratic plurality over Republicans, so we're expecting to pick that up as well. We have 2 strong Democratic candidates running in that area, but that brings us to your area, District 5. And the thing I want to share with you on this is that if we're scaling on the 2018 gubernatorial race approximately, John Cox won this district by about 3.6 points. So that is really significant, right? When we're talking about getting a Democratic majority on the Board of Supervisors. And obviously, Mayor Katrina Foley is running in District 5. She's going to give it a hell of a job, or she's going to give it a hell of a try, and we're going to be there to support her. But she's running against Diane Harkey, a former California Board of Equalization member. Diane Harkey once represented 1/5 of the state's voters. She's an incredibly powerful Republican. When we're talking about taking the majority on the Board of Supervisors, you'll also notice that districts 2, 4, and 5 are technically the most Democratic districts out of all 5 districts. The Republicans, because they control the districting process, really try to screw us on this one. So districts 1 and 3 are up in 2024. They are the more Republican of the districts, and it'll be tougher for us to take those. So our chance at taking the majority on the Board of Supervisors until 2026 relies on electing Katrina Foley this cycle. That is super important for us. So that's something I definitely want to impart to you all. Katrina Foley is our most important race. Okay, I think I have a lot more to say, I promise, but I don't know if there's time for questions. I'm happy to take some.
Yeah, does anybody have, AJ, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for AJ? I didn't see anything in the chat. Alex, if you could help me out and notice, but AJ, that was super informative and really good information for all of us. People have been asking questions. It's confusing. I'm great to hear that Katrina Foley is going to be your main target, your focus. And let's see. So there's a question about, saw a couple in here about Matt Harper. Is he running for any office that you know of?
Matt, you know what, he might be. I saw his name just a few days ago. I'll get back to you on that, whoever asked that question.
No problem. Yeah. And any thoughts you want to share about the Board of Equalization race? I see we have one of the candidates running, I think on the call tonight, David Dotson.
Yeah, and you know, best of luck to David. Our party, and I have to take the political answer here because there is a Democratic incumbent there. Our party does not endorse in that race. That's going to be a California Democratic Party process. So David, you know, definitely get your word out there. The delegates will be voting on a pre-endorsement conference in February, and the final endorsement for that race will be in March. Great. And then actually on the on the previous candidate question, he's currently filed around for Huntington Beach Council.
Okay, great. And then you mentioned about Little Saigon and what efforts you're doing there. Can you expand upon that a little bit before we move on?
Absolutely. Working with Chair Briceño and a whole bunch of our Vietnamese community leaders, we convened a group of volunteers last year to increase our outreach effort. We've done now several events in the community, including commemorating Black April, which is the commemoration of the fall of Saigon. It's a very somber event. And we had a whole bunch of our elected officials, local, state, and national folks coming out to commemorate that. We're doing more events in the community. Just next month, we're going to be celebrating the Tet Festival with a whole bunch of local Democrats in there. We're also working with our partners at the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, or the DTRIP, to make sure that our paid advertising and our paid targeting efforts are working there. Very lastly, we're also working with the DTRIP on making sure that we're registering more voters and educating more voters in the area. So there's a new team going out called the Outreach Team. It's a consulting firm that we're working with that's going to be going out to high traffic areas, registering voters, shoring up our Democratic plurality in the area.
Great, great. Sounds good. Thank you. Dennis, do you have a really quick question you wanted to ask AJ?
Yeah, just a great presentation. Just wanted to confirm for the important Board of Supervisor race for Foley and Pete Hardin, we can get them through right in June and then they're done, right? So is it vitally important that this is it, right? Get on the game right now and get them through one and done in June?
That's exactly right, Dennis. And I'm so glad you brought that up. And in fact, I can geek out about this all day because Orange County has archaic election laws that are drawn up by Republicans in the 80s. But very importantly, Orange County, so the reason I didn't mention the County Board of Education is because they're not done drawing their maps yet. But that race is definitely going to be decided in the June primary. And I know Senator Min has a bill to address that particular electoral problem. In county races, that's district attorney for Pete Hardin for district attorney, Katrina Foley for supervisor. Those races, if any candidate gets over 50% in the primary, they win, right? So in Pete Hardin's case, there's only 2 candidates on the ballot. So that means it's done in June. Okay. If, let's say, another candidate jumps in the supervisor race or the district attorney race, it could go to November. I don't expect it to. We got to win in June. So thank you for the question, Dennis.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. That kind of segues into, we in this club are looking at, and I'll let you know, AJ, doing a coalition with some other clubs, and it's a primary focus on the primaries only, getting information out, door knocking, dropping lit that has the candidates for the Board of Education, for the Board of Supervisors, for the DA that are not labeled as Democratic or Republican to all Democratic registered voters in our area. So we're going to need our entire club to really step up and help us knock that out, because those races are critical in this early primary time. So we're going to start doing that very, very soon. So awesome. That's great. And AJ, thank you again for all your work. We love your leadership there at DPOC and everything you're doing. So thank you.
Thanks, Gwen. And I got to say, it's clubs like LBDC who make it possible. Without LBDC, I wouldn't be able to have a staff that's organizing, that's working with candidates, that's training candidates, that's uplifting young people of color in our internships and our fellowship programs. So I got to thank you all. Really appreciate you having me.
Well, you're very welcome. We know how important you are to the success of Orange County, but also even larger than that, all the way up and down the ballot. So thank you again, AJ. Really appreciate it.